Welcome to the latest edition of the Vic State Cricket Podcast. I'm Adam White, and we have a very, very special guest with us today. It's our last podcast before the Christmas break, before the BBL break. So when we think BBL, we think of probably only one man. It's Glenn Maxwell, and he's with us. I'm not sure whether it's a good thing or a bad thing you're with us. But you should be out playing on the Junction Oval at the moment with your Victorian teammates.
Yeah, it would have been nice to be out there, obviously, but sometimes you have these little setbacks during your career, so hopefully I can get through this little setback and get out the other end.
Well, it's a chance that we can now sit down and sort of reflect on your career to this point, particularly from a navy blue and white perspective. But I want to ask you straight off the top, what got you into cricket?
That's a good question. I'm very, very lucky in my family, very sporting family. I've got an older brother who's 9 years older, older sister who's 11 years older. So it was very much a accident, mistake, whatever or afterthought, whatever people want to describe it as. But to have sort of older siblings being able to help me in the backyard, throw balls, obviously compete against, I suppose, growing up, really helped. My dad and my brother were heavily involved at the local cricket club, which was only 200 metres across the road at South Belgrave, and spent a lot of time over there in the nets growing up with school friends, training, practicing, and watching my brother play either junior or senior cricket. And it was now that I sort of look back on it, it's quite an obvious transition to sort of obviously play cricket and be heavily involved. But I was certainly blessed with, I suppose, the access to facilities that I had, having the cricket nets like so close, having a lot of friends that lived really close to me that we were able to go up there, train and practice and have fun with the game. And I probably fell in love with it as soon as I could pick up a cricket bat. There's photos of me as a 2 and 3 year old padded up and hitting balls in the backyard. And I suppose as early as I can remember, I always loved the game.
Was it always cricket? Were there other sports that you played as well?
Oh, there was a heap of other sports. Like I think I was a highly coordinated child who could, as long as there was a bat and ball involved, I was pretty handy at it. And I love my footy. I suppose growing up as a junior, won a couple of BNFs in junior footy, and probably had decisions to make. I think as a lot of talented young kids do, they can sort of go off in any direction they choose. If they can put their 100% effort into it, they can probably make that a winner as long as they've got the determination to do whatever they like. And I probably made the decision a lot earlier than a lot of kids. I think I stopped playing footy at under 14 level, which wasn't an easy decision. I absolutely love my footy, so I didn't play under 16s. I put all my devotion into cricket. I trained, I practiced. I was 5-6 days a week probably from 10 years on right. All the way through junior cricket. I was fully focused. I'd be getting different groups of friends over to the nets to bowl at me, bowl at them, practice non-stop. And I was just infatuated. I knew exactly what I wanted to do from a really young age and just devoted all my time to it. And probably even went to high school. I'd take a tennis ball to school and like throw it around, and I was always active. I was always doing things, and even in the off season, I was doing sports that related to cricket. I'd play tennis once I stopped playing footy to make sure my agility was good and my hand-eye coordination was good. Played baseball to help my throwing and all that sort of thing. So I was always doing things to make sure my cricket was getting helped in some way. And it wasn't probably till I got to about 18 I decided to go back and play footy. I felt like cricket was starting to drop off, and all the time that I'd put into the sport, I didn't feel like I was getting the rewards that I thought I was going to see at that age. So I went back and played. I played 2 games in under 18s as a bottom age player. Got injured, so I missed the rest of the season, missed the finals, and then the following year I played as a top age player. Played the whole season. Won the BNF, we lost the semi-final, and I just had a feeling I love this game. I want to sort of give it another crack, and went over to England the following year to play club cricket just in Norfolk, just outside of Norwich, and sort of went through some sort of troughs, not in form, but just care factor for cricket. Like I was with my brother. It was the first time I'd been away from home for any period of time, and I sort of found myself hating the game a little bit. Like I put all my life, all my time and all my effort into it, and I just wasn't seeing the rewards that I thought I was going to see out of all this effort that I put into this sport. And my brother actually pulled me up on it. I sort of broke down after a day, and after we played during the day, and I did well. I scored 100 in a club game, and I'd had enough. Like I was emotional. I was upset. I didn't want to play anymore, and he sort of just pulled me aside and said, "We've got another month here. Don't think about the results. Think about the 10 guys that you're having fun with. You've made some really good friends here. Enjoy the game, and just have fun. Like we're having a trip of a lifetime. Just have fun. Don't worry about the cricket. Just enjoy it. We're lucky that we get to play on the weekend, working during the week. Just focus on having fun, like outside of that." And once I stopped thinking about results, stopped thinking about what people were thinking back home of whatever results were getting sent back, of how I was doing, I was able to sort of refocus again and realign sort of the values of actually why I play cricket in the first place, is to have fun and enjoy it, and enjoy that camaraderie of the people that you play with. And I ended up breaking all the league records. I scored, I think it was about 750 runs in the last 5 games, and they're all one-day games as well. So I went on a bit of a tear there, and none of the games mattered. It wasn't like it was, I felt really good after a day's play. I was just numb at the whole time, and came back and had a really good year of Premier Cricket, and got contracted the following year. So that was the end of footy, and I never looked back. And from there on, it was I wouldn't say it was smooth sailing, but from there on, at least it sort of started my career.
Gee, there's so many questions that come from that answer that I'd love to ask you. Just the whole thing about when you're growing up, who your heroes were, because you play such a dynamic game that no one really in Australian cricket has ever played. But I'm fascinated to know where you got your inspiration from to be the cricketer you were before you were a professional cricketer.
Yeah, I think probably early days, like even though I was very young, I think guys like Dean Jones, the way he played one-day cricket was what I watched one-day cricket for. Even seeing some of these classic matches on TV, I love watching them back, and what he did back then was extraordinary. The way he ran between wickets, the way he fielded, his energy at the crease, it was almost different to everyone else. Like I know Viv had the swagger and all that sort of thing, but Dino had an energy at the crease. He was willing to take the game on. He was always doing something just a bit different, just a bit more high energy, a bit more aggressive. Like he took the game on, and it was awesome to watch. And then it sort of probably goes into watching the way Brad Hodge played, and then Mike Hussey, Ricky Ponting, these guys that were just entertaining, great to watch. I remember, I think the Tsunami game, I think it was the rest of the world versus India, or Australia versus the rest of the world, or something. Yeah. It was something like that. But I remember Ricky Ponting and Brian Lara batting together out in the middle, and I just remember Ponting smacking them everywhere, batting in a hat, hitting Chaminda Vas all over the place, and Asia versus the rest of the world, that's what it was. And I just remember watching it going, this is awesome. Like, this is so good to watch. And those are my memories of, like, inspiration and watching guys taking the game on, being exciting, and that made me want to go to the next game and then the next game. And I think that's probably why I play the way I do. I think right from the start when I played for Victoria, I always wanted to play a brand of cricket that I'd want to come and watch, not a brand of cricket that would keep me safe for the next game. It'd be a brand of cricket that I'd want to come and watch. I want to inspire the next generation, hopefully coming through. And sometimes at the start of my career, it could have been a detriment of how I started my career, because I was always trying to be entertained. I was always trying to take the game on, and probably with not as much, I suppose, care factor to... I wouldn't say care factor. It was probably not as much thought into maybe what the game situation needed, but it was what I thought would have been entertaining, and what I thought I would have wanted to see. And for the first few years, it worked. Like, I played really well. I did well for Victoria, and then it probably accelerated my career a little bit further because I didn't know what I was doing. I was just batting and taking the game on. But once people start to work you out, it can come full circle again. You obviously have to adapt and change, and we see that a lot with, I suppose, the young guys coming through.
So growing up, you're playing sort of through your teenage years. Were you that dynamic batsman then, inventive? I know you had to go, you're fast bowler, I think, initially, and you tried leggies, you did everything, but just that mindset thing that you're sort of sharing with us now, is that something that it's just in you? It's almost your personality, or?
Not really. I think under 12s, 14s, 16s, I had a brilliant technique. I wasn't very big. I was able to score all around the ground. I was just able to move the ball around. I was able to score quite simply. I felt like I was able to adapt to what was in front of me. I always had good footwork. And I think as I got older, and I probably didn't feel out as much as I thought I was going to. I was just a tall, skinny little kid, and I shot up that way instead of sort of shoulders wise, and I actually had to find a new way to score once I suppose I got older and older, and I think all the junior stuff I was able to score pretty comfortably. As soon as someone bowled something loose, I was in a great position to hit it, and then once I got to senior cricket, it wasn't that easy. I felt like I had to find new ways to clear the infield, clear the rope, find a different way to get a boundary, and that's where the inventive stuff came out. I knew I had all the shots, but because I was dominating junior cricket, I never really needed to play them. I was just waiting for a bad ball and I'd put it away. And once I got to senior cricket, where they didn't bowl as many bad balls, I'd had to be a little bit more inventive about the way I scored runs, because I wanted to keep the same strike rate I always kept throughout my junior career, and never really got bogged down, never really had an issue with scoring. And I suppose it was only once I sort of came to the Vic squad and your net sessions were full on, your centre wicket practices were full on. I started to try and work out different ways of scoring, trying to uppercut quicks like in the nets, and getting inside the line and pulling them over fine leg, and probably not as easy as it sounds. Like I think, what was it, Harwood, Nannis, Lewis, Mackay,
Wright.
Denton, Wright,
Pattinson,
both Pattinsons. They were Siddle. They were nightmare net sessions. I just remember Hastings, like that. They were relentless. They just didn't stop. They kept coming at you. Steve Gilmore was there as well. It just never stopped. Like they were always coming at you. There was always it didn't matter what group you were batting in. There was always a quick at the end of the net trying to knock your head off. And
you're ramping them and trying to flick them and do all these sorts of things. You're only making them angry there.
I made so many enemies in the nets, and I remember feeling, I feel like they hate me. And I listened to a couple of other podcasts with a couple of players, and they talk about the hatred in amongst the group, and then once you get into the ground, it's a united stand against the opposition, and that's exactly what it was. It was full on. Like trainings were just hard work, and like you'd have more anxiety about trainings than games, because it's like, how am I going to survive this? Like I know what's going to come at me today. At least in a game, you knew you had those 10 guys in the change room supporting you, and I felt like that was more powerful. I think, as people said, if you could get through our net sessions, you could get through anything. And I suppose having that as a young player, where I was exposed to that as a 20, 21-year-old, before I'd really made my mark on any sort of senior cricket, was pretty powerful.
Yeah, it's a common theme. If you can get through net sessions, you'll be able to do it out in the middle.
It's amazing now, because I don't face any bowlers in the nets anymore. Like I've at least got to the age where I know exactly what I need to get ready for games. But I do remember at that stage in my career, there wasn't really people throwing balls. There wasn't really that other side of the game where you had a bunch of net bowlers come in. It was, no, the quicks are on now. They have to bowl at you. The spinners are over here, and you just rotate through, and that's the only way you got your batting workload. So you actually had to go in there. Otherwise, you just didn't bat. So it was the only way you could get better, and it can spit some players out. It can make other people better, and you've just got to choose which group you're going to go in. And luckily enough, I was in the positive group.
So you talked about South Belgrave growing up, Premier Cricket, Fitzroy Doncaster, Richmond, the two clubs that you're involved in predominantly. That moment that you got to play for Victoria, because it all happened pretty quickly for you. Can you remember the phone call or the discussion about, Glenn, you're going to play for Victoria?
I certainly do. To give you a bit of context, I was for probably the start of the season. So I got the phone call. Just to give you a bit of context, I got the phone call on New Year's Eve. So for the first half of the season, I was sort of around the Vic squad. I was a rookie contracted player. I was around. I'd get called in to be sub fielder a lot of the time. So I'd be going on trips just for the sole reason Damien Wright's going to potentially go off the field with maybe a hamstring injury after he bowls his 10 overs, and you're going to field the last 10, 15 overs of a one-day game. And that was my role at the start of the season, and I absolutely loved it because I was involved. I felt like I was getting a part of the team, and that was my introduction to state cricket. And I was able to watch some really good players play. I was able to be around our current state side and watch the way they go about. That pretty much all of them had played for Australia, all being in squads. So the experience in the change room was unmatched around the country. So to be in that change room at that time was really special. And New Year's Eve, I was actually down in Sorrento with a bunch of my friends, and I got a phone call from a number I didn't have on my phone. And when I picked it up, it wasn't the most comfortable of hellos that I've said. And I was sort of, hello. And it was John McWhirter, who was the chairman of selectors, and I ran out the back because we're out in the backyard, music blaring, having a bit of fun, and I ran out the back where it was a bit quiet. And I was on the phone. He goes, you're selected to play against New South Wales in a T20 at the MCG on the 2nd of Jan. We've got training tomorrow afternoon. I was like, that's great news, John. Cheers. Thank you very much. And sort of came back and told everyone at the party. We all went nuts. And then the next morning I had to drive back from Sorrento to South Belgrave, where I was living with my parents, pick up my cricket gear, my training gear, and head into the MCG for training. I think actually my training might have been 11 a.m, so it was a pretty quick turnaround from where I was in the afternoon. I sobered up very quickly after that, and I went straight to training, trained my backside off, same thing, got in there and tried to play all the shots. And that night we played against New South Wales, and Usman Khawaja and David Warner opened the batting for New South Wales. It was an amazing feeling. I think it was 30,000 people at the MCG for a domestic game. So that was my first game of cricket, and it was amazing. We had Dwayne Bravo on our team, Matt Pryor. We had an awesome side, and I was just slipped in there. I think I was like number 7 or number 8. Didn't bowl, and took a couple of catches. And what was funny about that was because I was down in Sorrento, I think a couple of days before I got a haircut, but I had like these leopard spots sort of put in my hair, like these blonde patches. Just with your mates, you do some silly things, and then I was fielding in front of Bay 13, took a catch and my hat fell off, and I copped it for the rest of the game. I had these leopard spots, and I'm like quickly rushing back for my hat, trying to cover it up. Pretty embarrassing, but yeah, that was the start of it, and it was an amazing experience just to be a part of that group. The skill in that side was amazing. Then I think we made the final that season. We won it, and but yeah, to be even in the squad at that stage was pretty special.
So you told me before about you're playing all your shots in the nets. Now, me as a club cricketer, you hit the ball out of the net, you're in trouble. If you're playing silly shots, you're in trouble, or inventive shots. I'm probably showing my age a little bit. But for you, was it ever rein it in, or was it always, no, that's how you play, or this guy's got something that no one else has got? I'm really interested in those sort of formative years, how you were treated, how you were coached.
Well, it's quite interesting because we obviously had Greg Shippert as our coach at that stage, but I was very lucky that I had a couple of the senior players who were excited by what I provided for the side and what I could potentially provide down the way. I think Brad Hodge, Andrew McDonald, David Hussey, Bobby Quiney, those guys were really on side of the way I played, and they were really excited by what I did. They were some of my biggest supporters. So every time someone would maybe be coming down hard on me if I played a bad shot in the nets. They'd be like, "Nah, let him go. Like this could be really good for us. Like we need someone who can actually play like this." And Finchy was sort of coming through at that time as well. He'd played a few games for Victoria, and they wanted guys to sort of show their personality in the way they played, and they were probably really good at sort of keeping Shippy at bay, because Shippy was very technical, wanted guys to sort of keep the ball on the ground, elbow up and all that sort of thing. But I think the way that the senior players were able to, I suppose, help keep a few of the other guys sort of almost off my back a little bit, sort of allow me to express myself, allow me to sort of almost test the boundaries of how I could either get better, improve as a player, and I was also a sponge around those guys. I used to hang around them and not say a word and just listen to their conversations about cricket, and there was some heavy debates. There was some intense chats about the game where both of them had good arguments, but just like hearing them talk about the game was a different level that I'd never heard before in my life. And to sort of be around that experience, around that sort of calibre of players as a young player was so valuable, and certainly helped me in my early years. It helped me probably ease into state cricket, having that experience either side of me. Cam White, Dave Hussey, Andrew McDonald, basically always batting around me. Wadey and Bobby as well. They were always in the order around me, so I always had that experience. Chris Rogers as well. So those guys, to be in the side with them, it just makes you a foot taller. Like straight away, you're a foot taller. And it didn't matter what I did early days because I had that experience around me. So I was able just to sort of play my game without too much care, like, oh, if I don't make runs, we're going to lose, which is probably the way I played most of my junior cricket, where it was sort of a lot relied on what I did. But when I came to the state side, I was able just to play and enjoy it and soak up the experience that was around me and ease my way into state cricket. So I'm very grateful of the time I came into the side, and now I look back, I'm grateful for how tough it was and how that probably shaped me going forward.
You reeled off about 20 names just in this conversation.
Well,
batters and bowlers that were amazing players.
It's amazing. Like, I think the first game I played, I was the only person that hadn't played for Australia in the whole lineup, and that's pretty powerful. I think when you come into a side and you've got a debutant who's got international experience all around him, and it makes it easier for you to just go out there and enjoy yourself.
The game against Tassie down at Belrive Oval, if I remember it correctly, because I remember watching it at the time, it was a rain-reduced game or something. It was kind of under lights. It was pretty cold and bleak, but you scored your 50 off, I think it was 19 balls, which was a record at the time. Was that...
Still a record.
Still a record?
Still a record.
Well, there you go. Is that the moment that it clicked for you that, yep, I can do this at this level, or had it already happened and it was almost affirmation?
Well, there was actually a little bit of a process before that. Kenny Davis was the team psych at that time, and I was sort of out of favour at the start of that summer. I'd probably made a few mistakes around pre-season. I'd been late a few times. My professionalism probably wasn't quite there, and I sat down with Kenny and sort of mapped out what I needed to do to actually get back in the state side. And I wasn't in the one-day squad at all. Wasn't in the Shield squad at all, and or in the T20 side. So I actually had a lot of work to do. So once I got, I worked my way through the second 11 stuff. Played really well. I think it was the Futures League at that stage. Played really well. Got back in to the state side, and we'd set goals basically every game. So I sat down with Kenny. Okay, this time we've just got to make sure we're having a positive impact on the game. Just do whatever you can. Do everything right on the field. Get the bowlers had as much as you can. Literally just doing basics, like basic teamwork, which I think as a kid you can sort of gloss over that because you're so focused on, oh, I'm a batter, or I'm a bowler, whatever it is, and that's all you're sort of focused about. So it was more about being the best possible team man I could be, as well as doing my job. And I think I focused so heavily on that. So the first game, did everything right, tried to field, ran length of the ground. I was fit, so I was able to do all that stuff. And he goes, great start. Some really positive feedback. The boys said you're on fire, did some good stuff. Great. All right, next game we're going to finish off the innings. We've got to make sure that. So you probably gave it away a little bit with the bat. Let's finish off the innings. And I think the next game was at Adelaide Oval, and I think I got about 30, mid-30s not out off about 15 to 20 balls around that. And I finished the innings off really well, and I think we won that game, which was nice. And he's like, pat me on the back, great stuff. Okay, next step. got to make a 50 and like we're going to start to work. And the next game was the fastest 50. So it wasn't quite how we thought it was going to go. So it was more of we'd set these goals for a couple of games, but it just so happened it was happening game to game to game. It wasn't exactly planned like that, but the way it actually, we look back and every plan we set, we knocked off the next game. So it was amazing that we sort of did that. And then the next goal was to make the Shield side, and I played the next game. And then the next goal was to make 100, and I made it the next game. So basically the 5 or 6 plans, we should have set these plans in a lot earlier. It could have accelerated my career a bit, but it was great to sort of set these goals and sort of give myself something to aim for at the start of my career and sort of give myself some focus points, and to be able to sort of come back to Kenny Davis and sort of sit down and go, we achieved that. That was awesome. Like, it's great. And there was actually positive affirmation for me it's working. Okay, what I'm doing, I'm trying to be the best teammate I can, trying to sort of do everything possible that we can win games for Victoria, and it was working. And but yeah, that game in Tassie, it was a strange night. It was a really strange night because I didn't go in there with the thought that I could clear the boundary. I still wasn't exactly high on confidence in state cricket. I was still trying to find my feet, and I just got some balls that I could score off. There was some familiarity that I'd played against James Faulkner a fair bit. He was bowling early on in my innings, and I was able to get him for 20 odd off and over early on in my innings, and then that just sort of kept running on. I was able to keep going from there, and I think I was quite lucky with the start of my innings. I was able to face him, and sort of knowing that I faced him a bunch of times, junior cricket and Futures League, whatever it is, but I'd had that bit of familiarity. And then it was down to facing Hilton House, Brendan Drew, and these guys that I'd seen and watched a fair bit of. And but yeah, it was sort of the perfect storm. And then I got out with I think there was 18 or 19 to get, and then Peter Siddle got us home. I remember reverse lapping Ben Hilfenhaus for 4, and none of us had even seen that before. I don't think Sid had ever practiced it, never played in the nets, and there was like a little low full toss, and he just reverse paddled it for 4, and it's like he knew exactly where the ball was going to go. It's like he was on a bowling machine. It was amazing, and got us home on the last ball, and that got us into the final, which we eventually won.
And it was almost like that put you on the map. Obviously, it's a record, but anyone that didn't know you kind of knew you from that game onwards. Do you look back on it now, and I'm not sure how to quite put this, but I'm not saying you were pigeonholed as a white ball player from that moment on, but it was almost like that was what you were known for. Your Shield record is right up there. It's outstanding. You don't get to play much Shield cricket because of your white ball exploits. Do you ever think back of that it could have been different because of just circumstances and through your abilities to play the game so differently that your career's gone a certain way? It's a long question.
Yeah, yes and no. I had my opportunities as well. Like I feel like when I had runs of Shield cricket where I was playing for a period of time, I was able to find consistency. I was able to dominate periods of time during seasons where I was going really well. I was striking the ball well. I was scoring runs pretty consistently, and even in the first couple of years I started, it was pretty rare that I was averaging under 45 for most of the seasons, and I was scoring at a good clip. I was making influential runs. It wasn't like junk time runs. I was making influential runs that had a decisive result bearing on the game. Yep. So I felt like I was doing a lot of the right things in red ball cricket when I was given the opportunity, and then when I got my opportunity in Test cricket, it was just too early. Like I think I got my Test debut in 2012, and I'd only debuted the year before in 2011. 2013 I debuted in India. I debuted in Shield cricket in 2011, and there wasn't a lot of time to sort of eke out a Shield career or eke out a consistent way of playing long format cricket, and certainly grateful for the opportunity. And at that time I probably was the best spin bowling all-rounder available, but I just wasn't probably good enough already at that stage. And I think I had 2 tests there, and I was back in the wilderness after that, and there was a fair bit of chopping and changing around that 6 and 7 spot, I think, at that stage, players coming in and out, and then change of coach, I think, around the same spot. I think Mickey Arthur went out around the middle of 2013 and Buff came in. And that was just it was a time where I was like, okay, I didn't realise I was that close to the test side, and probably woke me up a little bit, and put a bit more pressure on my Shield stuff, and went away, and then got back in 2014, only played one game, and then I was back in the wilderness for 3 more years. And then when I finally got that opportunity, I was actually ready. And my game was at a point where I knew exactly what I needed to do. Came off a massive season of scoring runs for Victoria, and the results that I got in the test team weren't a surprise to me. I knew I was actually finally ready, where at the start I just a young, naive clown who was posing as a test cricketer. But it just happened really fast. I think when I debuted for Australia as a white ball player, I'd played less than a dozen games for Victoria. Like I still had no idea what I was doing. I was only just playing little roles, bits and pieces for the state side, and I was just fortunate enough to be right place, right time, I suppose. And that's sort of where my white ball career started, and that's sort of how you sort of start to get pigeonholed as the role that you play in that side as well. And that stems, what was 2012, I made my debut in white ball cricket, and you play a T20 World Cup in almost your first tour. You sort of get pigeonholed that way pretty quickly, and it took a while for me to sort of make sure I could adapt between all 3 formats.
Is it one of the reasons why, I mean, everyone wants to play Test cricket for Australia, but that it burns, you've still got that burn in you for Test cricket because you want that opportunity to play when you feel you're ready and have a crack at it, as opposed to when the opportunity was presented?
Yeah, I think that was probably why I took 2017 really hard. Like I found that was when I got dropped the last time, I hadn't really done it much wrong. Like I'd played the subcontinent tours, I'd played in India, played in Bangladesh where it was hot, conditions were almost impossible. And I felt like I got through it and did really well. Hit the winning runs, was there at the end with Petey in the last test, and we were coming into the home summer and I was like, I'm primed here. And then they had like a line in the sand moment where they said, oh, every spot's up for grabs all of a sudden. I was like, why now? Like, where's this come from? Why now when I'm finally back in? And sure enough, they changed the side. I didn't do much wrong in the lead up. I think that was like 3 or 4 Shield games, and I got 98 against WA, and I got a pretty average LBW decision against Jai Richardson. And I asked them, I said, oh, why didn't I get another opportunity? They said, oh, because you didn't get 100. I was like, oh, God. And that burned me. And I was like, that's okay. So 2 runs would have made a difference, which I never really got that. Like I felt like I was batting well enough. I think if they had have seen the way I was going about my game in Australia, where I'd scored all my Shield runs, I'd done all the hard work, I think the results would have been different. And I think the next week I got called up as backup for the first Ashes test at the Gabba for Shaun Marsh's back. He got through, and then I went straight to North Sydney Oval and got that 278. And same thing, there was an injury the next game, and then Mitch Marsh came in, got 100 at the Wacker, and that was and then I just went, well, that's probably the end. Mitch Marsh has solidified that. Then Sandpaper Gate happens in February or March.
Yeah, it was early that year, yeah.
And then myself and I think it was Joe Burns got flown over as cover, and I ended up being 12th man in that game, and I was like, this is unbelievable. I'm so close. And then I was like, okay, there's 3 spots now up for grabs. You just come off 700 odd runs in the Shield. You've played really well, averaging over 50, doing well. This is now my time. And then we had the Dubai tour. I think it was in August, September. And I was like, that's it. I'm going to be on that tour. That's going to be the start of my test career, or the restart again. So it's only a year later from when I've last played. And all the conversations I had with everyone, the selectors, the coach and staff, was all positive. Yep, this is a big year for you. Yep, spots up for grabs, all this sort of stuff. Yep, sounds good. Didn't get selected on the A tour. Didn't get allowed to play Shield. It was county cricket for Surrey. I think I had an offer. And I was like, okay. And I called them again. I said, oh, is this all going to plan? They're like, yeah, it's a good sign. We know what you can do in the subcontinent. And then I wasn't in the test squad for UAE, and I was like, what is going on? Like, I was just sort of almost got overlooked, and people just leapfrogged me from nowhere. And it's worked out okay. A couple of those guys are now ingrained in the test side, but that also could have been, if it just had gone a different way, if we had something a little bit more sort of similar in place to what it was the year before, I would have been okay, and I would have been on that tour. And who knows, my test career could have gone a completely different way. I could have been almost eased out of the white ball team, and I could have been solidified as a red ball player, because I was playing some really good red ball cricket at that stage. And I think once I missed that, my focus just changed completely. I tried the following year. I missed the IPL, went to England and played red ball cricket to give it one more crack, and that's when I went down that dark hole and ended up taking a couple of months off for depression. And looking back on it, it's not surprising. Like, there was a lot of heartache, there was a lot of ups and downs through that period where it felt like everything just didn't quite work at the right time when I thought it was going to work. Like, I feel like I was on a high and I just got caught crashing down. And then you work your way up again, you're crashing down, and it was bloody hard to take. I felt like I was doing a lot of right things, and just never quite worked. And then you sort of get pigeonholed as a white ball player, and you almost have to sort of try and live up to it. And 2019, when I took that break, that was my last red ball game. So I haven't played one since then. And just before I had this injury, I was more excited for these 2 red ball games at the MCG and the Junction than I've been in a bloody long time. And it's just a shame timing, I suppose. It just hasn't been right the whole way through the back end of my career.
It's almost emblematic of your career.
It is. Like, it's amazing the way that sort of things have just little things have just affected me at the wrong time. And this is probably just another example of it.
But at the same point, you're almost seen as a generational player for the way you play. And you've had, we're talking about things that have happened 10, 12 years ago, and you're still arguably at the top of your game in white ball cricket all those years later. So it's probably a different career to what you may have imagined, or maybe what you want it to be, but it's still an incredibly successful career.
Yeah, and
do you judge it as a successful career?
It's a good question, because there's so many things that I'm not flat about, that I'm disappointed that I probably didn't do as well as I would have liked at the top of the game in Test cricket. I'm disappointed that I couldn't quite make that that spot at number 5 or 6. I think I was pigeonholed really early days that could be my spot. That aggressive player at number 5 or 6, take the game on, win the game in a session, that sort of type of player, give us 10 overs a day with off spin and be electric in the field. To be able to do that in the test side, when I was able to do that well in 2017, I loved it. I felt at home, I felt comfortable, I felt really good about what I was able to provide for the side, and I think that will be one thing that it'll always irk me a little bit, I reckon.
No, I can understand.
Just not getting that full crack at it that I would have liked, that maybe some of the others potentially did.
It's a what if sort of feeling,
it is a bit of a what if.
Unfinished business.
Yeah, and I think that's why I was so excited potentially about these Shield games and the opportunity to show my wares in this format. And even the 2 net sessions I had with Ben Rohrer a couple of weeks ago, just doing red ball cricket and talking about technique stuff was exciting and entertaining and relaxing, and all the stuff that I'd been doing throughout my whole career. It was almost just coming back to the same thing. Like, let's just work on good technique, the flow of the bat, talking different angles, and it's the stuff that I'd been doing as a 12-year-old with Dad's video camera at the nets, like setting it up and going back and watching it and sort of going through and judging your technique against Adam Gilchrist, Ponting, Hussey, Hodge, like the guys that I used to love watching, like trying to judge it and sort of see what they did off their pads or through cover, and seeing how that relates to what I'm doing and contact points and all that sort of thing. I went so in depth as a young kid, and to come back to that at Victoria and have that sort of sort of almost refocus moment was really exciting. But yeah, there's always going to be that little bit of unfinished business.
Now I'm going to ask this question, and there's kind of two answers to it. And the question is, what is it like to be Glenn Maxwell? Now I'm going to ask you from a cricket point of view, walking out to bat, knowing that you have every shot in the book. What's that like? What's that feeling like going out there knowing that you've got that?
When you're in form, when Glenn Maxwell's in form, it's fun. Like it's really good. It's fun. It's relaxing. It's knowing that the opposition's nervous. That's good. When you're out of form, it's horrific. My God, it's bad. It's knowing that the expectations of what people expect or have seen you do before, what they expect of you to do in that game, and you in the back of your mind thinking that you don't have it in you at the moment, it's a scary feeling, just going, I feel like I'm going to let down all these people with my inability to be able to perform today. So it goes both ways. There's so much pressure, I think, for players that can play a lot of shots. I look at probably these days, Fraser McGurk, he's got more talent than anyone I've seen in a while. He's got so much skill, he's got so many shots and so much raw ability, but it's also hard having that much talent and raw ability to be able to put it into numbers and put it into substance and be able to show a quality cricketer, or show that you're a match winner, or show that you can be relied on as well. To be able to have all those shots and all that ability, but also be reliable, it's a balancing act. It really is, and it's been something that I've had to work on really hard over the years to, be that dynamic player in the Australian side, but also be reliable and consistent. And so those two things don't really go hand in hand a lot of the time. And for people to expect you to score at a strike rate of 140 all the time, but be consistent, you're asking one thing of one player and asking the top order to score hundreds off 120 balls. They're chalk and cheese. So to be able to go out there and take risks straight away, take the opposition on, it's not a simple thing, and it's not a simple thing to be consistent at, but it's something I've had to try and work at really hard over the last few years.
You sort of half answered the other part of the question of being Glenn Maxwell, and that is the polarising way you play attracts all sorts of attention from the media, from the fans, about the way you play. How do you cope with that? Because if you take the good Glenn Maxwell, you've got to take the bad Glenn Maxwell, because that's the way you play. But that's hard, I think, because that's not the way cricket's kind of been. Well, you kind of defy the way cricket's been. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think Michael Di Venuto put it perfectly. I think we'd be sitting in the whole team would be sort of sitting there watching me bat, and I'd reverse sweep one for 4 or 6, and they'd be all clapping, cheering. He goes, "All right, that's fine, but don't berate him for the bad ones. So if you're going to clap that, that's fine, but don't berate him for the bad ones. It's still a premeditated shot. Like if he makes a mistake with it, why are you berating him? We want him to be doing that stuff, but if you're berating him, it's putting like doubts in his head. It's making him think that he's not doing the right thing. He's doing what the team needs him to do, is up the run rate, provide a spark, give us something that a surge of adrenaline that the total needs. So I was really glad of the backing and the support I had around different teams. I think David Hussey, Stephen Fleming at the Stars early days, David Hussey I suppose when he was captain as well, Warney early days at the Stars, Simon Helmet I think when he was coach of the Ryobi Cup team at the time. Those sorts of guys around me were able to sort of let me play my brand. Obviously try and help me become consistent, but not sort of take away too much of the flair and too much of the aggressive style. It was about trying to sort of find ways to think your way through scenarios where it was the right option I was taking. I had maybe 5 or 6 options for the same ball, but to pick the right one is a hard skill sometimes when you've got a lot of options for the same ball. So to be able to sort of practice and train that, I owe a lot to those guys that actually took the patience, had the patience with me to stick through me through times where I didn't probably score the runs I would have liked. 2019 World Cup, I dropped off pretty quickly where I had a few times where I had some low scores, but I sort of got stuck with. I got some good support around me to go, no, that's the way we want you to play. We'll keep backing you, and really thankful to a lot of those people.
Do you read it? Do you listen to it? Do you, whether it's TV or whether it's radio, newspapers, social media, can you block it out, or it just water off a duck's back?
I think you go through stages. I think early days I read all of it. Like I soaked it all in because I wanted to know what was being said, to sort of have a really good idea of how I'm going to answer questions or whatever. If I do get asked, I didn't want to sort of be in the dark about anything. I wanted to sort of know what was going on, and probably, I'm not sure if that was to my detriment at the time, but I think as I got older, I stopped caring. I stopped caring about what other people thought, and if people asked me, I'd tell them blatantly, honestly, how I felt or what I was thinking. And I've got a great relationship with a lot of the journos these days, because when I see them, I sit down and have a conversation with them off the record, and they know exactly what I'm thinking. So instead of them writing an article not knowing what's going on, they know exactly what's going through my head. I talk to them. So to be able to have that relationship with them, then it all of a sudden becomes a bit of a two-way understanding, where when I get out, caught at short third man, playing a reverse sweep, they go, no, he's trying to get it over him. Like he sees that as his gap. So we can understand why he's doing it. Not just going, he's played a stupid shot and there's no reason for him to do it. They actually understand the method behind what I'm trying to do, and the method of the bowler I'm trying to do it against, whatever it is, and I can explain that to them to give them a better idea. And all of a sudden your perception becomes a little bit better. Other people start to understand, because whatever they read, they think that's the reality. They think whatever that journalist says has to be the right thing, which is generally very heavily skewed towards how the journalist either feels about that player or what he sees in his own personal views. So to be able to sort of have those honest conversations off the field with a lot of people, I feel like has probably helped people understand me a little bit better. I've been pretty honest about the way I try and go about things. I see a field, I try and hit the ball where the fielder isn't. I try and hit the fit ball over the infielders, and I try and hit boundaries. So if the game's not moving forward, I'm not doing my job. And if I get out trying to move the game forward, I'm okay with that.
I think you talked about before with the Dean Jones factor with you. Dean Jones had the ability to get people emotional about cricket. And I think you're very much the same, is that you get people feeling things. You get people emotional, you entertain people. So there, with that comes emotion, comes disappointment, comes exhilaration. It's sort of, it's a difficult one. It's hard to win because, we want you to entertain us. We don't want that to stop. But that's expectation too, isn't it? It's a difficult one.
Yeah, there is. There is a lot of expectation when every time you go out, you know exactly how the crowd is sort of, here he comes, like, I wonder what's going to happen today. And if you get out, there's just you can feel the disappointment around you. You can feel like everyone's shoulders slump, and it's like, he's ruined our night. Like, I'm sorry, I'm trying, but there's a lot of pressure, I suppose, when you go into. So even I look at the Big Bash. So the Big Bash I've been a part of since day one. So it's now come up to BBL 12. It's disappointing that I'm not going to be there for the start of it, but I look over the last few years, and there's been a hell of a lot of pressure on me as a captain, me as a player in that side.
You on the mic?
On the mic. There's a lot of moving pieces of the puzzle, like non-stop. You're doing the press after the game. You're doing press after you've lost 2 finals in a row. You finish in the bottom 3 the following year. You have COVID hit games. Like, there's so much going on, and out of all of it, you've still got to try and hold your nerve, be entertaining, be what everyone comes to the game to sort of watch and provide to their expectations. It's a lot to be relied upon on just one player. And as I said, as I've got older, I've become better at not worrying about it too much, not being able to sort of let it affect what I do on the field. Being able to go, you know what, all my focus is what the team needs right now is me to play in this certain way. And I think that's helped being a captain as a leader, to be able to go out there and go, no, our team needs this Glenn Maxwell today, not so much this Cowboy needs 6 off every ball, need a composed innings that we need to sort of get through, rebuild, whatever, and then build from there, build a partnership with that bloke. So to be able to sort of change which sort of hat you put on, I suppose, as you're going out there, has been a transition, I think, from getting the opportunity to lead, especially with Stephen Fleming as coach originally, and then obviously having David Hussey as coach recently.
You talked about circumstances that have kind of counted against you, and I agree with you. That's been the case through the time in red ball cricket. But if there was ever a version of the game that suits you, it's T20 cricket. And the IPL just came at the absolute right time. The BBL, it's just been perfect for you. I'm just interested in your views on the game. Is it your favourite version of the game? Or you talked about Test cricket as well. And even just to educate people that are listening to this that love their cricket about, without going into too much detail, how different the games are. But it feels it's tailor-made for you, not just with your batting, but with your bowling and your fielding as well.
Yeah, I think back to some of our Shield wins for Victoria and working hard for a period of time over 4 days and getting a result. There's not many things that are more rewarding than working together with 10 of your good mates that you've grown up playing with. You've worked so hard against an opposition, and to get a result on day 4 or whatever it is, and there's just not much as special as that. T20 cricket's fun, it's entertaining, it's good fun to play, it's easy on your body. Well, it's tough with all the running and all that sort of stuff, but it's a quick format of the game. It's great fun. But I think the rewards emotionally and physically that you get out of longer form cricket, they're unmatched. And to be involved, I think my last test was my only test win. That's something that I'm never going to forget. To be able to wear the baggy green in stinking hot Chittagong with 10 of the other best cricketers in the country, to win a test match was an amazing feeling. Even to draw one in India was a pretty cool feeling. Even the feelings that we had around that was amazing, and the work that goes into playing that longer format is. I found the grind around training for longer format cricket more fun than some of the white ball games that I've played. So even more recently, being in the test squad for Sri Lanka, the couple of days training before the first test was some of the most fun I've ever had. Getting into the nets are all scuffed up, balls are popping and bouncing over our heads, the spinners are just ragging them square, they're rolling on the ground. That was so much fun. But the grind to try and work out a technique and work out your tactics if you were potentially going to play was so exciting, so much fun and exhilarating. And it actually that was what sort of lighted the spark a little bit for me to go, this is where I want to be. This is exactly where I wanted to be. And it was just great fun. And that was cricket to me growing up. That was basically going back to early years, 10 to 13, where I was just grinding away, working on my technique and trying to find a way to be the best. And that's what you do when you're in a test squad. You're trying to find a way. Marnus and Steve Smith do it really well. They every time they go to train, they're finding a way to be the best and to score mountains of runs and make it impossible for the opposition to get them out, and come up with a batting strategy, tactical strategy to make sure that they're successful, and they probably do it better than anyone else.
3 more questions for you. The BBL, it's about to start. You're not going to be there for the start, but maybe towards the end. Where do you see the future, or how do you see the next 3 to 5 years with the BBL? Someone that's been intrinsically linked to it. It gets a bad rap at times, but where do you see it over the next 3 to 5 years?
Look, I think this year we needed that draft to happen to get that interest, I suppose, early days before the World Cup started, with a bit of interest around the BBL. At least start it early, have a bit of a build up, talk about the overseas players that we're getting in. I'm glad we've gone to, I suppose, trying a different way to go about it instead of just doing it, I suppose, offline, and you end up with a second or third tier overseas player coming over and playing 3 or 4 games here, and then another one coming in 3 or 4 games. You've got set dates on it, so it's actually keeps you interested, keeps you involved, and I suppose it gets people excited. Like to have, I know for the Stars, I know I'm super excited to sort of see Trent Boult open the bowling in the MCG. I think that's going to be exciting for everyone, and that should be exciting for the competition. We probably didn't get the big names that we would have potentially liked from what we saw the first list. It's nice to see. I think Faf Duplessis just signed at the Scorchers, which is great for the competition. To have people of his ilk involved in the competition is exciting, and that's what we need to do. I think the next step is making sure that our local players are taken care of, because we are going to see these leagues take over at some stage. We are going to see the IPL teams who have got their hands in different competitions around the world. We are going to see them take over. It could end up being a bit like Live Golf. I can see it sort of heading that way, and if the BBL is not careful, it could get overrun by the amount of cricket that's going on around the world, and it's going to be hard to compete with, because the IPL teams are just so powerful and so entrenched, I suppose, in different comps around the world that they can have that power, and there's not really much we can do to match it.
Do you feel torn by that, because you are so big with the IPL and have been for a long time, and you kind of get it because you know what it's all about, you live it, and then you've got the homegrown BBL. How do you find that balance? That's a supplementary question, by the way.
I sort of feel a bit like Rory McIlroy, because I've been a part of the BBL for so long. It's been a massive part of my career. It's been a massive part of me growing as a player. I sort of owe it to make sure that I'm at the forefront, trying to stick by it, trying to stick up for it, trying to almost be the face of it, or not be the face, but be the person to sort of speak out, to find ways to make sure it survives, make sure it...
Validate it.
Yeah, basically make sure that it's relevant. And that's all we want. We want the BBL to be relevant. And we look back to those early days when we had 80,000 at the MCG for the Derby and packed out stadiums all around Australia. It was unreal. And COVID hit at the worst possible time. Like, we had the expansion of the competition where we went to 10 games, then we went to 14 games, but they just happened at the wrong time. Like, I know hindsight's a wonderful thing, but COVID hit at the wrong time. All of a sudden, you can't get people into the grounds where you've got 14 games to, I suppose, sit at home and watch. And I suppose the relevance sort of went out of the competition. The players, you could all see that they were flat. They were almost done by the end of the tournament. They didn't really want to play anymore because they're stuck in a hotel the whole time. They can't even go outside and get a coffee. And then when COVID sort of infiltrated last year, the same thing happened again. So teams are playing second 11 sides in our major domestic comp, and it sort of lost its
luster.
Yeah, it lost its power that it had at the start, and we tried to, I suppose, delay a few games, but it just didn't work last year, and the last 2 years it just hadn't worked, and the timing of expanding to that 14 games was just horrific. It hurt. I suppose the way the competition was going hurt crowd numbers, hurt interests. And I'm hoping now that we've got open stadiums this year, we might see that peaked interest again. We might see a little upside, and who knows? It could turn around, and we could all be pleasantly surprised. But it's got to be able to be shortened at some stage to either bring the games a little bit closer, play a few more double and triple headers where we're able to get the tournament done quicker in a shorter space of time to, let's be honest, get back to playing state cricket, get our players back playing red ball, putting their name up for test games. Like, how are we going to pick our test side out of players playing Big Bash and club cricket this year? I think it's probably the only comp in the world that we've got our major Aussie summer going, and the only thing we've got in the background is Big Bash. It's not great when you have a test team going. If there's a couple of injuries, there's not many guys coming off first class form. And it's really hard to sort of just come in and play against South Africa. We've got Norkia, Rabada, and Geedy, and you've been playing Big Bash and trying to smack Shadab Khan for 6 at Hobart. Like, it's going to be interesting to sort of see the sustainability, I think, of our Big Bash running over the Test summer, and see if that affects the back end of our Test summer at all at any stage.
All right, 2 more. So I asked you about what the Big Bash might look like. What does the next 2 or 3 years look like for you?
It's a very good question. It's a hard one because originally what I'd planned, I suppose before this, a couple of weeks ago, I had a really busy time coming up. BBL I was hoping that the tests in India, real focal point on that, into I think there was ODIs against India and into the IPL, and then I was going to have a couple of months break during the Ashes. I already got the tap on the shoulder from George Bailey. He goes, "Oh, you won't be needed for the Ashes," and I was like, "Very good move, George." Haven't played much red ball cricket in England for a while, so completely understand that. And but I was looking ahead to June, July to sort of have my break and have my time off, where my focus probably now has changed a bit to be able to have. I'm probably going to be home all summer, and this is now my time off. It's a time to, I suppose, get myself genuinely match fit for the rest of my career. It's actually quite exciting. Something that I'm really looking forward to is I can now set myself up to be injury free for the rest of my career, be fittest I've ever been, have basically a pre-season before the season. So if I can get back, hopefully by the end of the Big Bash around that time, to show I'm playing, I can be fit and playing good cricket again. There's a real chance that I can get back over to England this year. Next year, and maybe play a bit of red ball cricket, maybe try and have another tilt at it. And I'm actually really excited by the next couple of years, and I'm not putting anything in stone. I'm not putting retirement dates on anything, because I actually think this has probably elongated my career a little bit. It's probably given me a bit of time off when my body probably needed it. There's never a good time to do an injury, but after what we've just gone through over the last couple of years, COVID, back-to-back tournaments, I've probably had 3 months of quarantines in amongst that. It was hard work, and to get a forced break at a time where I didn't think I was going to have one is probably worked out okay.
So nothing ruled in or out. I mean, that's an exciting sort of mental position to be in. That, who knows?
Yeah,
still feel like that.
Well, that's the thing. I could have looked at this anyway. I could have said, "Oh well, this could be the end" or whatever. But I've tried to look at it in the most positive way I possibly could, and went, you know what? This is a break that you've been forced to have, but it's a positive time to have a break. You can now set yourself up for the rest of your career, and you can enjoy it. You can be injury free. You don't have to worry about like little niggles or little soreness that I've had for the last 12 months, trying to get through every game, trying to get through every series, and being tired for every series as well. I can make sure that I can eradicate most of that and start myself up on a plan for the back end of my career. And it's actually really exciting. It's nice that I don't have to sort of pencil anything or cross anything out and say, nah, that's off the table. I'm not playing that format anymore. I'm in a really good place where I feel like I can finish off my career as well as I ever played. So it's exciting.
It's been a real treat for Victorian cricket fans, because you are a Victorian and we're proud to have you as a Victorian. So my last question is, and I ask all our guests this, what does Victorian cricket mean to you?
Victorian cricket means to me, it was my grounding. I think it was basically the foundations of my career. I think I look at Victorian cricket from playing the Vic under 15s, missing out on the Vic under 17s both years, playing top age Vic under 19s. They were all, I remember the Cricket Victoria pathway like the back of my hand. I remember seeing every step. I remember as a kid looking at it and trying to tick them off as I went through, and always seeing Cricket Victoria state team at the top of that form, and just going, that's where I want to be. And to be able to achieve that and to be able to have that grounding, as I said, toughest net sessions you'll ever have, international experience falling out of our ears. I was so lucky to play for Cricket Victoria when I did. I was so lucky to have the grounding and the people around me when I did, the coaching staff, the senior players, even a couple of the younger players that were coming through. They were all going through the same tough initiation as I was. I was so fortunate to have that grounding for when I actually did play Australian cricket. So I felt like I wasn't ready for Australian cricket, but because I'd played for Victoria, I probably was. For what I went through in net sessions. When I got to Australian net sessions, they were nothing compared to the Victorian stuff. So I was very fortunate enough to have the grounding that I did at this state, and I'll always be grateful for the opportunities I got.
Look, there's so much more I could ask you. We could be here all day and all night, but I just want to say thank you, because this is Cricket Victoria's podcast. So for Victorian cricket fans to listen to what you've just poured out, your honest emotions and told all those stories, I think a lot of people will get a lot out of it. So on behalf of all cricket fans, and Victorian cricket fans particularly, thank you.
No worries, Whitey. Cheers.
Glenn Maxwell joining us on the Vic Cricket Podcast. That is it for us for this episode. We'll catch you again soon.